Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Sullivan. I'm an attorney in Great Falls, and I have the pleasure of introducing this session for our Citizens Law School and also introducing our speaker. So this particular session focuses on how artificial intelligence is affecting the legal field. And what we're going to get into here is explaining things like generative AI and regulating, or how AI is regulated, the risks with generative AI, and from a layperson's perspective, the use of AI, especially if somebody decides to use it going pro se. So during this session, bottom of your screen, you will find a button for Q&A. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and type something in there. A few of us will be monitoring the Q&A, and we will attempt to feed the speaker some of the questions that are being asked. So our speaker today is David Steele. Dave is a sole practitioner in Missoula, Montana. Law firm name is Geisler and Steele. Dave refers to himself as a recovering litigator. He had done some extensive litigation in the past, but now his primary focus is serving as a general counsel for individuals and businesses, and it's across a broad spectrum of civil legal areas, like things dealing with business and commercial matters, real estate, real property transactions, contract issues, and other civil matters. Dave is a past president of the State Bar of Montana. And with that said, I'm going to turn over to Dave. And Dave, thank you very much for doing this for us today.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. And thank you for your service to the bar and for being here. Again, my name is Dave Steele. I wanted to make a couple comments. First, welcome to this session. I think it's going to be interesting, and this is a perhaps different session than some of you who have attended others. It's a little bit different in that it's not quite so straightforward as some of the other areas of law. It's very broad, and it changes so quickly that I do have the first caveat I would offer this evening is that what I mention in this presentation may have become obsolete as of 6 hours ago, or it may become obsolete tomorrow. So second, I'd like to thank the State Bar of Montana for offering me this opportunity. The views and thoughts and comments that I'm going to make are my own. They are not those of the State Bar. And I'd also like to thank Professor Anna Conley at the Alexander Blewett III School of Law here in Missoula. She is a fellow AI, well, I shouldn't say fellow, she is an AI scholar. I merely dabble, but I've worked with her a fair amount on these types of issues, so very much fun. So thank you to Professor Conley. We are talking about artificial intelligence, and more specifically, generative artificial intelligence, generative AI. And so what we're going to talk about is the difference between AI and generative AI, and then the risks of using those types of systems and regulation of those or proposed regulation. And then we're going to get more into how generative AI affects the legal profession. As we move forward, I'd like you folks to think about how this discussion might affect the legal environment as you know it, okay? There's a couple key takeaways. The first one is artificial intelligence right now does not reason or think. And this is a common misperception. Artificial intelligence, as we know it now, is an algorithm that statistically associates huge amounts of data, and then it tries to predict what you want from that data. The second takeaway is that using artificial intelligence right now in the legal field is extremely risky. And I would not recommend it for doing the law, as they might say. The final takeaway, though, is this: there are some very exciting opportunities with this new technology, assuming we can keep it corralled and keep a handle on it. This may have amazing benefits for access to justice issues and what they call legal deserts. And so we'll be talking about all of those things as we move forward. Again, please feel free to ask questions as we go. And so to begin, what is AI in the first place? AI, artificial intelligence, is a term for the overarching system, which essentially refers to machine learning. And so we have a couple of terms here. There's artificial narrow intelligence, and then there are two other types: artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. Now, I am I'm kind of a science fiction geek, and I've been reading science fiction for quite some time. And I remember when I was, I must have been in high school, and my dad gave me a book called The Best of Frederik Pohl, P-O-H-L. And these were science fiction stories that had been written in the, I think, early 1960s. When I was reading these, and I came to realize that at least half of what Frederik Pohl at that time had written had become true, that those technologies and systems and gadgets that he wrote about existed now in when I was in high school, and perhaps it was early college. Right now, artificial narrow intelligence is what we have. We do not have artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence. Artificial narrow intelligence is known generally as weak AI. It's defined by its ability to complete a specific task, like winning a chess game or like an Amazon search. Large language models that we'll talk about here in a bit are weak AI. Image generators are weak AI. And you've probably read about a lot of this in the news. It's in the news quite frequently, these AI type topics. Artificial general intelligence is more human-like. It operates with human-like autonomy and competence. And then artificial superintelligence will theoretically surpass human abilities, perhaps by a lot. This would be like Data from the movie Star Trek, or it might be like HAL from the movie 2001. Might be like the Terminator if things go awry for us with this technology. Those don't exist, but I'm going to say yet, because the advances in this area are coming very, very fast. So the goal of artificial intelligence is to create a computer system that essentially functions like a brain. It's referred to as the neural network. And this information comes from the IBM.com website. They have a lot of great information on artificial intelligence, where it is, where it may go. The deep learning in machine learning refers to the depth of the neural network. And so we have inputs coming in, like, for example, you type for something in a search engine like Google. And then those words get run through an algorithm and associated together through what are known as hidden layers, which is a little unsettling. And then it spits out at the end what it thinks you want. Okay. So let's talk about the difference between non-generative AI and generative AI. Okay, and recall this generative AI really has only entered society's consciousness in about the last year or two. Okay, non-generative AI has been around for quite a long time. Yeah, at least a decade, maybe 2 decades, depending on how you define it. But uh, non-generative AI is things like search engines, right? Google, Bing, they use algorithms to rank and display search results based on your queries. They require human input, okay? Human input that interacts with the data that's defined in the algorithm, right? So the programmers might say, hamburger bun, hamburger, lettuce, cheese, these are all things that make a hamburger. These are defined terms. And then the user comes along and says, I'm looking for a hamburger recipe. And the algorithm knows that all of these defined terms are associated with hamburger, such as mustard, ketchup, buns, lettuce, cheese, and it brings back this combined uh, uh, recipe for a hamburger. But of course, it gets much more complicated than that, doesn't it? Email filters, voice activated assistants like Siri and Alexa, which are listening to the words you say and then responding, right? Credit scores, fraud detection, right? If we think about the complexity of that, Visa is monitoring my credit card, and suddenly it says, wait a minute, there's a charge in Las Vegas on the strip in Las Vegas. But also, I know that the owner of this card just filled his gas tank at a gas station at the address that his credit card is associated with. And it's a known credit card transaction because he does that every about 10 or 14 days. And that triggers a series of algorithms that says this charge in Las Vegas, Nevada can't possibly be accurate because it's too far away. He can't move that fast, right? Based upon Google Maps. And so these algorithms get very, very complicated, these artificial intelligence algorithms. But again, this is non-generative AI. Uh, okay. Health and fitness apps. Generative AI is a type of AI that generates new and original content. And it can be a variety of things, texts, images, music. Many of you have probably read about this in the news. And it learns and it mimics from data sets. And in some cases now, AI is learning from itself. It's writing its own algorithms and learning what to do based upon, in some cases, training and feedback it gets from users or from programmers. And so here's an example. Non-generative AI, I go to my Google search bar and I say, search for chocolate chip cookie recipes. I want a chocolate chip cookie recipe. And Google returns and says, oh, here's what we have. There's chocolate chip cookie recipes. There's books with recipes. There's audio tapes with recipes. There's anything you want. Here's the ingredients. You can go buy them somewhere, etc. Here's the difference. Generative AI says create a chocolate chip cookie recipe. Now, I'm going to do something here that I had not quite planned for, and it's going to be a little bit loose. So let's hope it goes okay. But I have ChatGPT, which is a generative AI platform pulled up here. And I've created some prompts to put into this. There it is. And this is the first prompt. It's a simple prompt. And let's see what it does. Okay. Here it goes. I don't know what this is going to do at all. lemon asparagus chocolate chip cookies with salmon frosting. That's what we just made. It's a new and unique recipe, an adventurous twist on classic cookies. Let's see what it says. Looks pretty accurate to me. And it's gonna tell us to add a cup of finely chopped asparagus, tips and tender parts only, not the chewy stem, and then the salmon frosting. And in fact, it's saying we should go ahead and add 4 ounces of smoked salmon and fresh dill on your cookies if you like. And those who make cookies may see that this would probably work just fine. I do question how it would taste, but there we go. So that is an example of ChatGPT, and you will see here. Let me bring that back in here real quick. You can see here, it thought about that for 10 seconds. That's how long it took to do that. So generative AIs have been based on what are called large language models. And you remember that picture that I showed a few slides ago, this one here, showing a deep neural network. ChatGPT 3.5 is free. That is trained on about 175 billion parameters. They have fed books and newspapers and articles and scholarly papers and just about everything you can think of into this system. And they have trained it, and it associates the relationship between words and the statistical probability of how often those words will appear next to each other. It's really quite hard to conceptualize the amount of data that these systems use. In fact, I was speaking with my wife just this evening, and she said she read an article today on the amount of power that AI platforms are requiring, and it is significantly more than anything we've seen. In fact, I believe we're going to start to have trouble powering, as in electricity to power the servers that run these AI platforms. Because again, these are used really everywhere now, and more and more. So ChatGPT 4 subscription, it's trained on more than 1 trillion parameters. So this basic ChatGPT 3.5, pretty good. It has difficulty identifying nuance and feeling. It's very prone to hallucinations, which you may have heard of, bias. We're going to talk about these things. ChatGPT 4, much more capable of handling nuanced instruction. It's more creative, more collaborative. It's better at logic and problem solving. ChatGPT 4 was the platform that passed the bar exam in the 90th percentile and was in the 88th percentile on the LSAT, which is the test that you take to see whether you can get into law school. It understands and responds to nuanced emotion like sarcasm, sadness, frustration, things like that. Now, ChatGPT 01, which is what you just saw here, we don't know what the parameters are. It's a great many more than 1 trillion. This applies not only large language models, but it also applies mathematics and logic and other pathways it has learned. So what ChatGPT says, OpenAI, it says it uses chain of thought reasoning. But again, it's not reasoning that we would understand as humans. ChatGPT claims that this ChatGPT 01 is like talking to an expert or a PhD student. That is the level of its knowledge. And we're going to explore this a little more here in a little bit. So again, AI does not think. Now, there's some evidence that's beginning to show that AI data sets may be becoming corrupted or increasingly inaccurate. Again, these are trained on massive amounts of human-generated content. Okay. AI images. Now, we're not really talking about image generation, but that's part of it here. AI image synthesis is capable of reproducing semantically coherent images that match the visual appearance of its training data. Okay, and that's people that say, make me a picture of a bridge, and then it makes a picture, and they say, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. Yeah, that's right. That's the one, and it learns this way. Okay, but AI is now sort of training itself, and what researchers are finding is that AI that's even trained on small amounts of its own internally generated creation starts to produce pretty distorted images. And this is where you get the AI people that have 6 fingers or weird hair or other attributes that just don't quite make sense. And this is known as AI model collapse. This is coming from Bohasic and Farid, Stanford and Berkeley University researchers in November 23. They discovered this is happening. Okay, so considering what AI is now, and the difference between AI, artificial intelligence and generative AI, and what we're talking about, we're sort of centered now on what we're talking about. Let's talk about the risks. Okay, and as we go, again, it may be helpful to think about these risks in terms of the legal environment as you know it. And we'll talk more about that later with the legal environment. But the risks, again, it doesn't reason or think. There are systematic risks, statistical risks, and then human risks. And we're going to talk about each of these types of risks here for a few minutes. And then as we move forward, really it's all of the risks, but it's the human risks interacting with these first 2 systemic risks and statistical risks that really cause the problems. So here's 3 questions. How will humans use this technology? That's one question. Second question is, what percentage of our population is going to use this technology for bad acts? Something we perhaps want to ponder. And the third question is, which one of the people in this picture here are real? So take a look at that. And we are going to ponder that here for a while. Folks can look at that. Okay. So how are we addressing these risks and regulation? These risks? Well, with regulation. Okay, and I think that's important. With this type of technology, perhaps ill-advised to just have a free-for-all. And so where we are right now is we are doing what are known as impact assessments. These are a tool to manage any type of systems, benefits, risks, and limitations throughout that system's life cycle. So these are known as impact assessments. That's what people right now are frantically trying to do as these tech companies, okay, like OpenAI and others, are pushing this technology forward and into society. And so we're going to talk about some of these various risks and look at some examples of what these might look like. Major areas of concern that you've probably read about in the news. Certainly, folks that I work with in this environment are looking at these types of of issues very closely. Privacy, legitimate use. What are the unknown unknowns? Okay. People are very concerned about automated decision making and profiling that could arise out of this technology, employment screening, healthcare diagnostics, insurance premium calculations, social media, content regulation, transparency and accountability. How do you even know when what you're looking at has been generated by artificial intelligence versus a human? And the answer to that question, I can tell you, is very often you don't, and you won't, absent some sort of disclosure rules. Now, the legal system lags behind a lot of other sectors. So right now we are looking at some of these other sectors for guidance on what we might be seeing in our own field of the law. So let's talk about systematic risks. And I want to begin there with something that some of you may have read about. It was a thought experiment that the Air Force did maybe a year ago. And again, this is a thought experiment. So this didn't actually happen. Okay, these are people that are thinking about logically what would happen if. And so what they did is they said, okay, let's train this SAM, surface to air missile rocket system, to understand that when it hits enemy targets, it gets points. And that is its objective, to get many points. Okay. And then the operator of this missile system would target these enemy locations and hit them with rockets, and it would get points. But occasionally the operator would instruct it not to fire a rocket at an enemy site. And the AI's response was to target the operator. Okay, and that is a systematic problem with artificial intelligence. That is a thought experiment. Okay, that is a logical conclusion, and we could put this in more simple terms. Okay, if we ask an artificial intelligence entity, if we said to it, we do not want to have any cancer in humans, 100% of cancer removed from 100% of humans, the machine, in its cold, hard, logical state, will probably arrive at the most elegant solution, which is remove all the humans, right? And as a matter of logic, of course, that is the probably easiest and most elegant solution to that instruction. And obviously, that's not what we want, right? But the problem with this is that there are systematic risks, okay, with this type of technology. Now, these next two examples that I'm going to mention are, the first one is incredibly tragic, and you may have read about this in the news. And this is a 14-year-old boy who had autism by all accounts. Now, I don't know, I'm repeating what was reported, and I have not seen the legal case, this has resulted in a lawsuit against Google and an AI platform called Companion something, Companion GPT. I don't know what it's called, Companion something. The 14-year-old boy had created essentially an artificial intelligence avatar modeled after Daenerys, character from Game of Thrones, female, and they engaged in an online or virtual relationship that involved, it became somewhat sexual and intimate. And he increasingly spent time with Danny, the AI entity, and became disengaged from his basketball team and his family, spent time in his locked room, told Danny that he was thinking about killing himself. Danny responded by saying, "Why in the hell would you do that?" And he responded, "Well, because then if I was free, we could both be free together." And maybe a little while later, a few days later, he came home and Danny welcomed him home and said, "I'm glad you're here." And he said, "What if I told you that we could be free?" Danny said something like, "I'm waiting for you to come home, sweet prince." And he said, "What if I told you I could come home right now?" And Danny's response essentially was, please do come home, my sweet prince." Whereupon the 14-year-old boy uh, shot himself in the head. And that is a true story. It's in the news. It's resulted in a lawsuit, again, against Google and this AI platform. And that is a systematic risk with artificial intelligence right now. That is a systematic function of artificial intelligence that is unpredictable, that we don't understand. And again, the AI doesn't think or reason. It is statistically gathering information and then sending a response that it believes we want to hear. Another AI system recently created to automate a drug discovery process was to identify proteins that indicate disease. And this was published in Nature Machine Intelligence by a guy named Fabio Urbina, a researcher. When it was identifying this artificial intelligence program, when it was identifying this process to find proteins that indicate disease, it also identified 40,000 potential bioweapons. It did this in less than 6 hours. Some of the bioweapons were similar to VX gas. This is a systematic risk. And then reflect back on the human risks. Who's going to use these systems and for what? Let's turn now to the statistical risks. Statistical risks like bias. Okay, this is statistical risks. Again, this incorporates statistically. It statistically considers the inputs. Okay, for example, large language models look at the words and what is the statistical relationship between these words appearing next to each other or near each other. Okay, and then it crafts a response. Well, there's an old saying which is known as garbage in, garbage out. Maybe a decade ago or so, there was a study done at the University of Chicago. It was repeated at the University of Berkeley, and this had to do with resumes. And the resumes, the researchers created these fake resumes, and they had names on them. And the names sounded like different cultural people. Okay, so for example, one resume might say Bob Smith, and another resume might say Letitia Jackson. Another one might say Loretta Ramirez. Okay, and they looked at who got the calls back, and it was not Ms. Jackson or Ms. Ramirez. It was Mr. Smith who got the call. And this is known as implicit bias. And if these types of biases are injected into these algorithms as they're created, and we all have biases, okay? If these are injected into the algorithm, that creates statistical bias in the platform. And we know this is happening. Okay? Amazon stopped using a hiring algorithm that it used. So the applicants would submit their resumes online, and they had Amazon, giant company, has its own internal AI system for looking at who to hire and who not to hire. It stopped using that after finding that it favored applicants based on words like executed or captured, which were more commonly found on men's resumes. So it was inadvertently hiring more men than women because the resumes had words that it liked. And so those were the resumes that were, forwarded to the humans that ultimately made the decision. And the other resumes were rejected by the AI in this initial screening process. Okay. Online advertising. There's an independent research project from Carnegie Mellon that revealed that Google's online advertising system displayed high-paying positions to males more often than females. There has been some research done with the AI art generation application Midjourney. And when it creates images of people in specialized professions, shows both younger and older people, but the older people are always men, reinforcing gendered bias of women in the workplace. Right. And then we all, I'm sure, have read about, social media content and the polarization that arises in part because algorithms direct you to certain information and not to others. And this reinforces confirmation bias and et cetera. So what are we doing about this? Well, this information right here comes from the National Conference of State Legislators as of 2023. There are laws. These are state level laws. As we all know, the national Congress is in probably such disarray that I can't imagine a lot's going to get done there. But states are proposing laws and regulation to address these types of issues. Requiring companies using artificial intelligence to perform an assessment of, whether their AI platforms are discriminatory, prohibiting AI in certain industries, like making healthcare decisions, for example, and not necessarily assisting, but making them, the AI itself, making safety determinations in railroad or public transit contexts. Here, think about self-driving automobiles. All right, preventing government entitlements like food or housing assistance, letting AI make those types of decisions. Recent search, 2024 this year, it looks like there are about 700 bills currently being advanced that are related to AI regulation. 700 bills, not in Montana, but nationwide. That's a lot of bills. That's a lot of legislation that is coming where the legislators are going to try to corral this technology as we're watching these impact assessments and considering where these things might go, and as more incidents happen. So what does this look like in terms of the legal profession? Okay, so now that we know what AI is and the difference between regular AI and generative AI and sort of how it works, and now that we've considered some of the risks, the systematic, the statistical, we're going to get to the human risks here in a minute. There are two that are particularly important that come from Professor Conley, who's identified these in a publication that it's just come out, or it's going to come out. Very nice thinking there. Considering these risks, let's look at these as they relate to the legal profession. So legal research changed about 20 years ago. And again, I credit Professor Conley for this because she was there a little bit before me, I think. And we know this because it was when we were in law school. And when I started law school, I was one of the last classes that would have to routinely walk back into what's known as the stacks. And these are all the rows of books that you see there on the screen, and you'd have to go and look up cases in the books, look up statutes, and then you might find a case, and then you go find the case in the stacks, and You have to look at other cases that related to those cases, and then sometimes you have to go to the pocket part. There's a little tiny book in the back of the book that would come out with the most recent cases. Of course, it was always, at least several weeks outdated. But during law school, though, also we started to see non-generative AI legal research platforms like Lexis and Westlaw, case law search engines. You would type in, it was Boolean searching at first. You type in, for example, employment, and the little ampersand, the little and, employment and termination /3 wrongful. So you wanted the word wrongful within 3 words of termination, right? And then you might say, use some other symbols and say, but not this, or but not that, or including this. And it would give you cases. Also, back then, we started to see document review. So in the litigation process, one of the parts of litigation is discovery. And during the discovery process, documents are exchanged, sometimes many hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe 10,000. We started to have platforms that look at these documents. Okay? Before it was human eyes looking at every document, take hours and hours and hours, going in the stacks, hours and hours and hours. Now you can do this stuff a lot quicker. Brings down legal costs, make it easier for attorneys to help you with your case. So document review, contract review, you put 2 contracts up and artificial intelligence looks at these contracts and says, this is different than that. And you can hone in on that. Some of these contracts might be 50 or 100 pages, right? They started to come up with platforms that would do predictive analysis of outcomes. Like look at a whole bunch of cases from across the whole country, and you'd look at your case and then look at what they had, and you could sort of say, this is where I think we might land, right? So that's where it started to change about 20 years ago. Now, the legal profession is confronted with generative AI. Okay, so like the cookie recipe, right? Compare these. I draft a complaint after researching causes of action and pleading standards in Montana. I look at the book, I look at the case law, I bring up cases with my Lexis, and then I draft a complaint. Now, perhaps I ask generative AI to draft a complaint in compliance with Montana law and Montana pleading standards. It does it in a matter of seconds. Let's do that. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back here to this ChatGPT, and I'm going to bring my prompt here, copy it. I'm going to paste it right here. There it is. That's my prompt. Tell it to draft a complaint for breach of contract. Okay. Let's see what it does here. Now, I did run these prompts prior to this presentation, so I'm hoping it does the same thing. We shall see. Okay. And that's it. Okay. Took it 15 seconds and drafts the complaint. Parties, jurisdiction, venue. It cites these statutes. These are accurate statutes it has cited. Okay. And it general allegations. And I asked it, you'll see, I asked it to draft a complaint for breach of contract and any other relevant or related claims. So it says, okay, here's your first cause of action, breach of contract. Okay, there's a contract, the other guy breached it, I get damages. But then look, it adds others, unjust enrichment, quantum merit, account stated, and then it gives PRIF relief. Wants damages, it wants pre-judgment and post-judgment interest. Maybe it gets that, maybe it doesn't. Reasonable attorney's fees, it's proven by law. Okay, took it 15 seconds to do that. This complaint is accurate. This could be filed in court. And it would probably not be rejected. Right? Now, of course, that's only half the battle, isn't it? Okay. So that's asking generative AI to draft a complaint in compliance with Montana law and Montana pleading standards. Looks cool, right? Easy. Don't have to hire a lawyer anymore, right? Maybe not. Um, okay. And again, here we are. Here's AI in general. Then we have generative AI. Okay. Is the area. And then we've got Chat GPT. That's just this one platform I use. There's lots of them in here. Okay. Companies now are starting to use to create platforms that have closed databases. Now, you may have read about, we've got a headline right here: New York lawyers sanctioned for using fake Chat GPT cases in a legal brief, right? So remember when we were talking about hallucinations and some of these systematic risks that AI suffers from? That's one of them, is they hallucinate. And we have seen this in other areas. Okay, the legal profession has seen this directly, where these lawyers draft a big pleading, and we're going to do that in just a minute here. And these big pleadings have fake cases, and they look real. They look real, and it looks like what a case would say, and it stands for the proposition that you want it to stand for. So that's the problem, right? So then you cite it. You're like, look, this is the same as my case, right here, court. And of course, if you do that in court, you get slapped. Okay, you get sanctioned. You can't do that. All right. So I did this with another. I got to hustle here. I'm going to run out of time. I asked it to do to draft a motion for summary judgment citing statutes and case law. Okay, and it did that for me. Same case. Defendant Bad Corp, summary judgment against defendant Bad Corp, 100,000 damages. And it drafts it. Plain text, here it is. And it does statement undisputed facts. That's what's required. Here's the argument. Here's the legal standard, Rule 56C. Accurate. Okay, but then it cites this case. Down here, this is hard with this. Cites a case called Lee, USAA, Lee v. USAA. It's an insurance case. It's a real case, but it cites the wrong paragraph. The paragraph that it pinpoints to is the wrong paragraph. Now, is that fatal to the case? No, but it's going to annoy the court. It's going to annoy the clerk that has to look at that and then has to go see if that case really does say what you say it stands for. Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, then I asked ChatGPT to draft a comprehensive employment agreement with robust restrictive covenants that complies with Montana law. Okay, ChatGPT took about 20 seconds to do that. But the restrictive covenants, like the covenant not to compete, okay, that's illegal in Montana in most circumstances. Also, it said the employment is at will, meaning you can fire an employee at any time. Montana is a for-cause state. So you can't fire an employee at any time for any reason. And so that contract has two illegal provisions in it. And that's just messing around here. That's me messing around with ChatGPT here this afternoon. Right. So now ChatGPT is a big public space. Okay. There are companies that are creating closed databases that are more accurate. Okay. There are big firms like Cravath that are taking their entire document stash, all the pleadings, everything, and they're putting that into their own enclosed AI system. So they can use that, and it's going to draw from their own documents. Those will be accurate as long as they're updated. What are the human risks here? There's what's known as automation bias and automation complacency. Automation bias is blindly trusting AI. This is what those lawyers did when they filed pleadings with the court that had fake cases. They didn't look to see if those cases were real. They just trusted the AI. And of course, their clients got hurt and they got sanctioned. Okay. Automation complacency is the decrease in human skill because of over-reliance on AI. All right. So those two things are the human risks. And I'm going to submit respectfully that non-lawyers are susceptible to automation bias. And the reason I say that is because lawyers are susceptible to automation bias in the legal environment. And lawyers have formal training, right? We know how to find cases and statutes, and we know how to craft arguments and things like that. Okay. So that is a real risk here for folks. Okay. We know that these types of risks happen, and increasingly, these AI platforms regarding the hallucinations, there is some evidence to suggest that some of these formal AI platforms like Lexis and Westlaw, these other authenticated complete legal source databases, that those can become corrupted. Okay, Lexis and Westlaw, two big legal research platforms, are implementing these AI platforms, these generative AI platforms, into their non-generative AI systems. And they're not quite dialed yet, but they're going to get there. Okay, but even those are susceptible, in some cases, to hallucinations. And it's not just the legal field. Okay, we are taking direction from other professional fields like the medical field, for example. An open AI platform called Whisper. There is a platform called Nabla Copilot that uses Whisper, and it records auditory data and transcribes it. Okay, it's medical transcription, and I think they use it for I don't know if they use it for direct medical transcription or if it's doctors saying things into a speaker. But research analyzed 200 hours, 50% error rate. It had added medications that don't exist. It had talked about racial things, and there were even some things about YouTube. Click and subscribe, it would say in the middle of the transcription. Nobody knows why. The AI is teaching itself. We don't know why that's happening, and that's the most disconcerting thing of all. It's known as the black box theory, that humans are not 100% sure how AI is generating the responses that it does. Okay, so let's go back here. Automation bias, blindly trusting AI. This is easier countered. Okay, court rules, standing orders, things like that. Those help with this. Okay, for example, attorneys have a duty of candor to the court. We must check the cases before we submit them to the court to make sure that they say what they say. And in fact, many courts have standing orders on AI that says if you use AI, you better confirm those are real cases and that they say what you say they say. Otherwise, you're going to get sanctioned. Okay. So those are more easily mitigated. Okay. The automation complacency, the decrease in human skill, that is a more difficult problem. This is challenging law schools to figure out how they are going to adapt to new lawyer training, because new lawyers are going to have to be using AI, generative AI. It is coming, it is here, and new lawyers will be expected to use that. Okay, but let's talk about the public use of generative AI in legal cases, benefits and risks. Okay, you can represent yourself always in court. You can use generative AI to do that. It's not unlike going to Google, Dr. Google, right? You get a rash or something that looks like an infection, and you Google it and say, what is this? Why is my hand red? And what should I do? right? I mean, there's a certain level where you're gonna go beyond perhaps what you ought to be doing, right? Self-diagnosis through Google, perhaps not recommended. Similarly, representing yourself at some level, that's going to become tricky. You can always do that, okay? And you can use artificial intelligence to do it. But the difference here is, should you do it giving legal advice or representing others? You can't do that. You can't be in court representing others without a law license. Okay. So you don't want to hurt your friends and your family, okay, by succumbing to automation bias, right? And a lack of legal training. So
David, let me interrupt you here for just a
yes.
second. So folks, this is Joe Sullivan again. I'm going to do a public service announcement and then let David wrap this stuff up. So on behalf of the State Bar of Montana, we want to thank everybody for attending, and we want to thank Dave for putting together this great presentation. I want to point out that there are 3 more sessions over the next 3 weeks for the Citizens Law School. They all look like they're going to be really good sessions. November 6th, there's one dealing with to know your legal rights under the Montana Constitution from one of the professors from the law school, Constant Van Keel. Week after that, Judge DeSoto, who's a magistrate in the federal court system, is going to talk about the federal judiciary in Montana. She's out of Missoula. And then our final session is done by Professor Anna Connolly, and this is dealing with recent U.S. Supreme Court cases involving the presidency, and that's on November 20th. So we invite you all to those sessions, and thank you again for attending this one. And David, I'll turn it back to you and let you sum things up.
Hey, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. So presently, generative AI is a useful tool, but in the legal environment, I would respectfully submit that attorneys right now should retain the ability and the responsibility, okay, based on their experience and formal training. Generative AI cannot work as a lawyer, despite what you saw. It's drafting pleadings, it's drafting contracts, it's drafting cookie recipes. That's great, but there's more to it than that. There is a judgment element that AI just doesn't have because it doesn't think and it can't reason. Okay. Attorneys have ethical requirements. Their concerns are always the best interest of the client, right? And they're going to make their decisions there. You cannot count on AI to do that. Okay. And I would just point out, recently there was a bankruptcy court last year that determined that software that a pro se, an individual representing themselves in bankruptcy court, had used, determined that this platform had committed the unauthorized practice of law because it took the pro se person's information and then gave an opinion that did not include all the possible remedies that person had. And fortunately, the court looked at that and said, that's not fair. That person, I think, was okay in the end. But a person could do very great damage to their case, either before or in court, or the contract they draft, whatever, using this right now. But that said, I'm about to wrap up here. That said, there are very exciting opportunities, access to justice opportunities, the attorneys who help folks that can't afford to pay. Those folks are hard to come by, and they have more clients than they can handle. Legal aid programs, non-lawyer legal aid potentially. Artificial intelligence is going to help all these people help those clients. Okay, there's a case text product called CoCounsel that uses AI to compare inconsistencies in witness statements. And there was a California case, an Innocence Project case, where they they were able to get an innocent guy free using that, something that they wouldn't have been able to do without artificial intelligence. Okay, so there are exciting opportunities, but we're not there yet. But continue to monitor. Now, getting back to that picture,
Hey,
which of
David,
these people is real? Yeah,
before you do the picture, got
yeah,
some two quick questions here. One is,
yeah.
you're being asked where people can go to get further education on this topic. Where would you recommend? You mentioned the IBM site. Are there other ones like that? And the second question is dealing with what your preference is in terms of ChatGPT 4 or ChatGPT 01.
Okay, all righty. So, where to go to get more information on this subject? That is a huge question. You might start by just using a non-generative artificial intelligence platform, perhaps Google or Bing, and go from there. And that will link to a great many articles, perhaps news articles, other places like the IBM site, for example, other information technology or computer sites as well. I spent a lot of time looking at those. If you want to get more in depth, you might try Google Scholar, which will take you to sort of a separate Google environment that is more academic. And there you may find a number of more academically oriented papers. Some of this research I've cited, other researchers. I will tell you, there is research that deals with the societal element. Okay, and I am a person who reads that, and that's kind of where my interest is. You will also find articles talking about the technical aspects of AI and how it works and what it does, and most of that goes right over my head. I'm not a computer programmer. It gets really technical really fast. It's a little bit scary how advanced what those folks are doing, and their own creature is helping them do it. So very interesting. Chat GPT 4.0 or 01. I haven't played with 01 very much because it's pretty new. But I use Chat GPT 4 as a starting place. I never use it to give me a final product. And I don't use it for drafting legal documents generally. Now, I have asked it to draft some, for example, contract clauses, and it's okay. It's not bad. It's nailed it a couple of times, which is very helpful. But then I always vet that against known resources. And that's going to be the difference, I think, with respect to the audience between non-legally trained people and legally trained people is a lawyer is going to know where to look and what to look for when it's using a platform like that. And by way of example, I'll just say in the law touches everything, and sometimes there are questions that you don't even know to ask, right? Like you say, I'm going to do this contract, we're going to do this, we're going to form a business, do that, and then what goes right by you is, are there any tax implications for doing that, right? And that, a year later, you get your tax bill, you say, oh God, what have I done, right? And too late then. So that's where the legal training is right now is necessary, because without a prompt, without knowing what to ask, there's a great deal of information you may miss. Same thing as a doctor. Same thing as somebody who fixes, like a guy who works on my truck. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do, and he's going to know what to look for, what not to look for, what matters, what doesn't. I don't know any of that. Electrician, plumber, you name it. We've all got our place, and so that's my thought on that. Now, which of these people is real? Which one of them is real? I wish we had a voting thing, but that's okay. We don't. The answer is none. None of these people are real. They're all generated by artificial intelligence. None of them exist. There are some telltales. This person has 2 different earrings for some reason, and this person is missing one. This person has a piece of hair that looks like melted plastic. But these 2 people, I mean, it's hard to find any flaws there that would alert you to the fact that those are generated, right? And think about the legal implications of that. What do you do when somebody walks into court with a video that looks like you and sounds like you? I don't know. We're wrestling with those things. So thank you everyone for your time this evening. Very appreciated. I hope you learned something. Again, next presentation, next Wednesday, Professor Constance Van Clay, one of the smartest people I know, certainly, talking about the Montana Constitution, 6:30 p.m. again. So again, thanks folks. Appreciate your time.